NATO was established in 1949, marking the official beginning of what would grow into a long-standing commitment among its founding nations. For 75 years, it has represented a continuous era of collective defense that has deeply influenced global relations. 75 years of the most powerful military alliance ever seen in human history. This alliance has remained intact and unified through some of the most difficult periods imaginable, including the Cold War, the collapse of the Soviet Union, the attacks of September 11th, the wars in Iraq, the long campaign in Afghanistan, and more recently, Russia's full scale invasion of Ukraine, all contributing to those 75 years of endurance. And today, on March the 16th, 2026, Donald Trump moved to threaten the collapse of that entire system. This was not in response to any direct attack by Russia on NATO territory, nor due to aggression from China. Instead, it came after the United Kingdom, Germany, France, Japan, and Australia all delivered the same simple two-word answer to the President of the United States. That answer was no. Trump had demanded that NATO allies deploy their warships to the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow and highly critical passage through which one-fifth of the world's oil supply moves regularly. He argued that countries dependent on Gulf oil should take responsibility for securing those roads. He described the mission as small and manageable. He also stated that he would be noting which countries chose to assist and which declined. Then, in an interview with the Financial Times, he used words that have now sent shockwaves through foreign ministries worldwide. He stated clearly that any refusal to help would be very bad for NATO's future. I am George Will. Tonight, we will explain in detail why every major ally rejected that demand and why their reasons deliver a far more serious blow to Trump's strategy than many in Washington are willing to acknowledge. We will also look at current oil price movements and explain what they mean for household fuel costs this week. We will point out the one nation that quietly moved two tankers through the strait while others debated, and what that reveals about real influence in this crisis. And finally, we will focus on the three words spoken by Germany that may stand as one of the most significant statements about NATO in its entire history. Stay with us as we go through everything step by step. Let's begin with Germany. The response from Berlin was not cautious or vague. It was not framed as a review or a possibility. Instead, Chancellor Friedrich Merz sent a spokesperson to deliver three words that have never been used in response to a NATO request in the alliance's 75-year history. This war has nothing to do with NATO. It is not NATO's war. The German government added that involvement in the Strait of Hormuz had never been considered before and is still not being considered now. Germany's foreign minister speaking in Brussels stated clearly that he sees no role for NATO in the strait at this time. This was not hesitation. It was a firm and final rejection. France took a similarly direct position. Its defense minister stated that France would maintain a defensive posture and would not join any conflict led by the United States and Israel. The message was straightforward. This is not our war, not our coalition, and not our responsibility. The United Kingdom's Prime Minister Keir Starmer also made the position clear. He stated that the UK would not become involved in the wider conflict, while at the same time announcing a $53 million support package to help households facing rising heating costs caused by the crisis. In effect, the UK is protecting its citizens from the economic consequences of the conflict while refusing to participate militarily. Japan explained its refusal through legal constraints, noting that its laws place strict limits on overseas military operations. Prime Minister Takahashi told Parliament that no decision had been made regarding sending escort ships. Australia stated that it had received no formal request and would not send ships regardless. South Korea said it was still considering the matter, a phrase that often signals a likely refusal. Iran's Revolutionary Guard responded briefly, saying simply, "Let him send ships." The isolation of Trump's position becomes even clearer when considering that even the United States Navy has been declining frequent requests from shipping companies to escort vessels through the strait. According to Reuters, the Navy stated that the risks were too high. This creates a situation where Trump is urging allies to send ships into waters that the U.S. itself considers too dangerous. This is not a small operation. It is a request that would place Allied forces directly into extreme danger. While Western allies rejected the proposal, one country acted differently. India initially stayed quiet, then took decisive action. Its foreign minister, Subrahmanyam Jaishankar, stated in an interview that India had already engaged in direct talks with Iran. He revealed that two Indian gas tankers had successfully passed through the Strait of Hormuz without military escort. While others debated, India used diplomacy to achieve results. Iran's foreign minister later confirmed that some countries had requested safe passage and that decisions are made by Iranian authorities. Iran is not blocking all ships, only those linked to the United States and its allies. This makes the crisis political rather than purely physical. China has maintained that the strait should remain open while continuing to import Iranian oil without interruption. Reports indicate that the U.S. warned China about potential consequences, but Beijing has responded cautiously, continuing communication while observing developments. Meanwhile, the impact is already visible in energy markets. Oil prices reached nearly 115 per barrel, the highest since mid-2022. U.S. gas prices are at their highest since 2023, and diesel is approaching $5 per gallon in many regions. The International Energy Agency has described the situation as the largest supply disruption in global oil market history. Emergency reserves are being released, but at the current rate, they could be exhausted within 26 days. This highlights that the reserves are only a temporary measure. Around 1,000 oil tankers are currently unable to pass through the strait. Multiple vessels have already been attacked or damaged. Iran has reportedly placed naval mines and warned that unauthorized ships could be targeted. European energy ministers are now meeting to address rising costs, while Iranian leadership has warned that oil prices could reach $200 if the crisis escalates further. At the center of all this is a critical question. What happens to NATO if its members refuse to follow the United States? NATO's Article 5, which defines collective defense, has been the foundation of Western security for decades. It ensures that an attack on one member is treated as an attack on all. This principle has prevented major conflict in Europe for generations. However, today's events have placed strain on that assumption. Germany, France, Japan, and the UK all refused participation, each for valid legal and strategic reasons. The Strait of Hormuz lies outside NATO territory, and no NATO member was attacked. Therefore, Article 5 does not apply. Trump's response, threatening NATO's future, introduces a new dynamic that global rivals are closely watching. At the same time, India demonstrated that diplomatic engagement can produce results. While Washington issued warnings, India negotiated access and moved its ships safely. The strait is not fully closed, only restricted based on political alignment. This suggests that a diplomatic solution remains possible. As the situation continues, oil prices remain high, tankers remain stranded, and the alliance faces internal strain. The next 72 hours will be critical in determining whether this crisis is contained or becomes a turning point with lasting global consequences. What you have just seen connects to a much larger story that many outlets are not fully exploring. That related video is now on your screen. Watch it before it becomes widely circulated. I'm George Will. This has been our detailed report on Trump's NATO ultimatum over the Strait of Hormuz. Every detail in this report has been verified through major sources including NPR, CNN, CNBC, Al Jazeera, the Financial Times, and the Kiev Post, all reporting within the past few days.